All right, let's talk about a conversation that keeps popping up for a lot of couples right now. Usually, when you're not trying to have it, it comes up while you're making dinner, or when one of you is scrolling listings on your phone, or when rent hits your account and you both kind of look at each other like, okay, so what are we doing? Because if you're in your late 20s or early 30s, dual income, no kids, you're in a weird in between stage. You're doing fine. You're not struggling, but you're also not trying to feel locked in or stretched. And the question that keeps floating around is simple on the surface, but heavy underneath. Should we keep renting or should we buy? What makes this hard isn't the math. It's the fact that this decision feels like it says something about your future. Buying feels permanent. Renting feels temporary. And you're not totally sure which one actually fits your life right now. That's the tension, because you don't want to rush into something and regret it, but you also don't want to look back in a few years and feel like you waited too long. That pressure is real, and it usually doesn't come from one place. It comes from friends buying homes, from family asking questions, from social media making it look easy, from calculators telling you 5 different things. And meanwhile, you're just trying to make a smart decision together. Now, before we go any further, real quick, if we haven't met, I'm Mark Powell with Osborne Home Group and eXp Realty. If you and your partner are trying to figure this stuff out without pressure or hype, you're in the right place. Make sure you hit like and subscribe so you don't miss the next video. All right, let's keep going. Most couples in this stage are renting something that feels okay. It works. It's manageable. You split it. You still have room to live your life. Trips feel possible. Weekends don't feel stressful. You're not thinking about every dollar, and then you start looking at buying, and that's when things change, because the payment jump isn't subtle. It's enough that you feel it. And that's usually when one of you says, yeah, we can afford it, but do we want to? That question matters more than people think, because affordability and comfort are not the same thing. On paper, dual income helps. In real life, it also means you're protecting a lifestyle you've built together. And here's where a lot of advice falls apart. People love to say renting is throwing money away, but what they don't talk about is what rent is actually buying you. Rent buys flexibility. It buys time. It buys the ability to pivot without stress. And when you're in a phase of life where careers are still evolving and priorities are still forming, flexibility is valuable. That doesn't mean renting is better. It just means it's doing a job. Buying does a different job. Buying trades flexibility for control. Control over your space. Control over your payment. Control over where you live. And control can feel really good or really heavy, especially when you don't yet know exactly what the next 5 years look like. Here's something I see a lot. Most couples don't fear the mortgage. They fear regret. They're afraid of buying too early and feeling stuck. Afraid of buying the wrong thing. Afraid of waking up 2 years later realizing their life moved faster than their house. That fear isn't irrational. Life changes fast in this stage. Jobs shift. Opportunities come up. Plans evolve. So when someone says you should just buy, it can feel like they're asking you to predict your future, and no one can do that. Now let's talk about buying honestly. Buying a home as a dual income couple often looks easier from the outside than it feels on the inside. On paper, the numbers usually work, but emotionally, buying introduces pressure. You're not just sharing rent anymore, you're sharing risk. You're making a decision together that has consequences. And alignment matters. One of you might feel ready, the other might feel cautious. One might be thinking long-term, the other might be thinking lifestyle. Neither is wrong. They're just optimizing for different things. And if you've ever thought, are we being too conservative? Or are we moving too fast? That's normal. This is also why comparison is dangerous. You see friends buying homes, posting keys, sharing updates, and suddenly it feels like you're behind, but you don't see their stress. You don't see their finances. You don't see the conversations they had before making that move. You're comparing your internal doubts to someone else's highlight reel. That doesn't help clarity. Here's a scenario I see all the time. A couple rents comfortably. They save, they live their life. Then they buy something that technically fits the budget, but tightens everything else. Trips feel heavier. spontaneous plans slow down, and the house starts to feel like it's dictating the rhythm of their life instead of supporting it. That doesn't mean buying was wrong. It means lifestyle wasn't fully factored in. At the same time, I also see couples who wait because they're chasing the perfect time. They wait for rates to drop. They wait for prices to cool. They wait for certainty. And what usually happens is that life moves forward anyway. Rent goes up, options change, and eventually they realize the decision didn't get easier, it just got louder. So if this feels like a no-win situation, that's because there's no perfect answer. There's just a best fit for where you are right now. Instead of asking, is renting or buying better? Ask, which one supports our life right now without boxing in our future? That question leads to better decisions. Now, before we go deeper, I'm curious, if you're watching this with your partner, what's the biggest thing holding you back right now? Is it the payment, the market, or just not knowing what the right move is? Drop that in the comments. One of the reasons this decision feels heavier than it should is because the numbers make sense until they don't. On paper, it looks straightforward. You add up your income. You subtract your expenses. You see what a lender says you qualify for. And technically, you can afford more than you're comfortable with. That's where things get confusing, because affordability on a spreadsheet is not the same thing as affordability in real life. Real life affordability shows up in small moments. It shows up when you're deciding whether to book a trip, when you're saying yes or no to a weekend away, when you're choosing between upgrading something you enjoy or playing it safe. And for dual income couples without kids, those moments matter. You've worked hard to get to a place where life feels balanced. You don't want a decision that quietly tips that balance without you realizing it. This is why I say lifestyle math matters more than spreadsheet math. Spreadsheet math assumes life stays consistent. Same job, same priorities, same energy, but life in your late 20s and early 30s rarely works that way. Careers shift, opportunities come up. Sometimes one of you wants to push harder. Sometimes one of you wants more breathing room. And a house doesn't just sit there, it participates in your life. It either supports your flexibility or it demands structure. Neither is bad, but you should know which one you're choosing. Another thing that sneaks into this decision is social pressure. Not loud pressure, quiet pressure. The kind that comes from conversations like, so, are you guys thinking about buying? Or seeing friends post photos with keys. And suddenly you start questioning your timeline. You start wondering if you're late, or missing something, or making this harder than it needs to be. But here's the part that usually gets skipped. You don't see the full story behind those decisions. You don't see how tight their budget feels, how stressed they were during the process, whether they actually felt ready or just felt pushed. You only see the outcome. And comparing your internal doubts to someone else's public moment doesn't help clarity. It just adds noise. What I see most often is couples trying to make a permanent decision based on temporary pressure. And that's when regret shows up later. Not because buying was wrong, not because renting was wrong, but because the decision didn't match where they were mentally. Here's something important to understand. Buying doesn't magically make you feel more settled if you're not ready to feel settled. And renting doesn't mean you're avoiding adulthood. It means you're choosing flexibility while you still value it. Now let's talk about the phrase, just wait one more year, because this one comes up constantly. Waiting one more year can be a great move. It can give you more savings, more clarity, more confidence, but waiting can also quietly turn into avoidance. And the difference between patience and avoidance isn't time, it's intention. If you're waiting because you have a clear reason, that's patience. If you're waiting because the decision feels overwhelming and you don't want to deal with it, that's avoidance. And most people don't realize which one they're doing. That's why some couples wait for years and still don't feel more ready. Because readiness doesn't come from time alone. It comes from clarity. Clarity about how long you want to stay in an area, what kind of payment actually feels comfortable, how much flexibility matters to you right now. If those answers are fuzzy, waiting longer doesn't automatically sharpen them. You have to actively think through them. This is also where the 3 to 5 year window really matters. If you can realistically see yourselves in the same area for a few years, buying starts to make more sense, not because of appreciation or market timing, but because of stability. Stability has value. Knowing where you live, knowing what your payment is, knowing you're not moving unless you choose to. But stability also comes with responsibility. And responsibility feels heavier when you don't yet have kids because life still feels open. That's the paradox of this stage. You want roots, but you don't want to feel stuck. And renting versus buying is really about how you balance those two things. Here's another thing people don't talk about enough. Buying doesn't have to mean buying your forever home. It doesn't have to mean locking into a version of life you're not sure about yet. It can simply be a strategic step that fits this chapter. But that only works if the house leaves you room to live. If the payment forces constant trade-offs, the house starts to feel heavier than it should. And that's usually where regret shows up. Not because the decision was wrong, but because the margin was too thin. Margin matters. Margin gives you room for change, room for opportunity, room for life to surprise you. And couples who protect margin tend to feel better about their decisions long term, whether they rent or buy. Now, this is usually the point in the conversation where people ask, so what's the right answer? And the honest answer is, it depends. But not in a vague way. It depends on whether the decision aligns with your life right now, not the life you think you're supposed to have. And that's something you can actually figure out. All right, let me pause for just a second. If you and your partner are trying to figure out whether buying even makes sense without rushing into anything, this is usually the step that helps. Most couples aren't actually ready to decide yet. They're just looking for clarity. And scrolling random listings or running online calculators usually adds more noise. So instead of guessing, I've set up a fully customizable home search that's built around how you actually live. Not a generic search. Not everything under a certain price, but something tailored to your comfort level, a monthly payment that still lets you enjoy your life, and the flexibility you want over the next few years. There's no pressure, no commitment, no sales calls. It's simply a way to explore what buying could look like for you without turning it into a big decision too early. If you want to try it, you can scan the QR code on the screen or click the link in the description and start your own custom home search as a research tool, nothing more. All right, let's jump back in. So where we left off, we were talking about how this decision isn't really about renting versus buying. It's about whether the choice lines up with your life right now. And this is the part most couples struggle with the most. Readiness. Because readiness doesn't usually feel like confidence. It feels like uncertainty, just with a little more clarity underneath it. A lot of people think they'll wake up one day and feel completely sure, like there's going to be this moment where everything clicks and they say, okay, now we're ready. That moment rarely comes. What actually happens is quieter. You don't feel fearless, you feel prepared. And there's a big difference. Fearlessness is pretending there's no risk. Preparedness is understanding the risk and being okay with it. Most couples I talk to don't lack courage. They lack trust in their own decision making. They're afraid of choosing wrong. But here's something important to understand. You can't make a perfect decision in an imperfect future. You can only make a thoughtful one. So instead of asking, are we ready? A better question is, do we understand what we're trading? Because every decision trades something. Renting trades long-term control for short-term flexibility. Buying trades flexibility for stability. Neither trade is wrong, but you should know which one you're making. This is where I want to slow things down again because this part matters. A lot of couples confuse nervousness with unreadiness, but nervousness is often just your brain acknowledging that the decision matters. It doesn't mean you're not capable of making it. Think about other big decisions you've already made together. Jobs, moves, commitments. You probably didn't feel 100% certain about those either. You felt informed and then you stepped forward. Buying a home works the same way. Now let's talk about some signals that tend to show up right before couples are actually ready, even if they don't realize it yet. One signal is that you're no longer asking, should we buy it all? You're asking if we buy what would actually fit us. That's a shift. Another signal is that your conversations change. Instead of debating hypotheticals, you start talking specifics, areas, layouts, commutes, what you like and what you don't. That doesn't mean you're committed. It just means you're thinking practically instead of abstractly. Another signal is that you start caring less about what other people think. Not in a dramatic way, but in a calm way. You stop measuring your timeline against someone else's. You start measuring it against your own comfort. That's readiness showing up quietly. Now here's something that surprises a lot of couples. Confidence usually comes after the decision, not before. Most people don't feel confident and then decide. They decide, and confidence follows once the decision starts supporting their life. That's why waiting for certainty can be misleading. Certainty often comes from movement, not stillness. That doesn't mean rushing. It means engaging. Engaging with the decision instead of circling it. Another thing that helps here is separating fear from intuition. Fear is loud. It spirals. It jumps to worst case scenarios. Intuition is quieter. It's the feeling that something doesn't quite fit or that something feels manageable even if it's uncomfortable. Fear says, what if everything goes wrong? Intuition says, this feels like a stretch but not a break. Learning to tell the difference takes honesty. And it often takes talking through the decision instead of just thinking about it. This is also why couples who talk openly about expectations feel better after buying or after deciding to wait. They're aligned. Alignment doesn't remove uncertainty. It makes uncertainty easier to carry. Now let's talk about the idea of locking yourself in, because this one comes up a lot. Buying feels final in a way renting doesn't. But here's the reality. Homes can be sold, lives can change. Nothing is as permanent as it feels in the moment. The real risk isn't that you'll never be able to change course. The real risk is buying something that doesn't leave you room to adapt. That's why margin matters so much. Margin in your budget, margin in your schedule, margin in your energy. Couples who leave margin tend to feel okay even when life surprises them. Couples who stretch too far feel pressure when things change, and things always change. This is also where buying with a longer view helps. Not because you're committing forever, but because you're giving yourself time. Time smooths out mistakes. Time absorbs market swings. Time gives you options. Short timelines magnify stress. Longer timelines soften it. That's why the 3 to 5 year question keeps coming up. Not because it's a magic number, but because it gives decisions room to breathe. Now, I want to address something that's rarely said out loud. Some couples aren't ready to buy not because of money, but because buying would force conversations they haven't fully had yet. About priorities, about spending, about lifestyle. And that's not a bad thing. Sometimes renting a little longer gives you space to have those conversations without pressure. Other times, buying becomes the catalyst that forces alignment. Both paths can work. What matters is that you're choosing intentionally, not drifting. Drifting is what creates regret. Intentional decisions, even imperfect ones, tend to age better. All right, let's finish this up in a way that actually brings things together. Because by this point, if you've stayed with me this long, you're not casually thinking about renting versus buying anymore. You're actually trying to make a good decision, and that matters. So let's talk about the line between flexibility and avoidance, because this is where things quietly drift if you're not paying attention. Flexibility is choosing to keep options open because they serve your life right now. Avoidance is keeping options open because deciding feels uncomfortable. They look similar from the outside. They feel very different on the inside. Flexibility feels intentional. Avoidance feels like spinning. If every few months you're revisiting the same conversation, asking the same questions, and feeling just as stuck, that's usually a sign it's time to change how you're approaching the decision, not necessarily the decision itself. And here's the part that helps. You don't have to decide everything at once. You don't have to jump from we're renting straight to we're buying a house. There's a middle ground that a lot of couples skip, exploring without committing, looking without pressure, running numbers without locking yourself in, understanding what fits and what doesn't in real terms. When couples do that, something interesting happens. The decision gets quieter. Not easier, quieter. The noise fades and clarity starts to take its place. And clarity is what actually moves you forward, whether that means buying now or waiting intentionally. or realizing you're closer than you thought. A smart next step isn't always a big step. Sometimes it's just gathering better information so the decision doesn't feel so heavy. Here's something I want you to hear clearly. There is nothing wrong with being thoughtful. There is nothing wrong with taking your time. And there is nothing wrong with wanting a decision that supports your life instead of defining it. You don't need to rush because other people did. You don't need to wait because someone online said so. You just need alignment between you, your partner, and the life you're building together. That's it. If you take anything away from this, let it be this. Renting versus buying is not a test you pass or fail. It's a tool, and the right tool depends on the job you're trying to do right now. Some seasons call for flexibility. Some seasons call for roots. Both can be smart. Both can work. What matters is choosing with intention instead of pressure. And if you've made it all the way through this video, I genuinely appreciate you. I know this was long. I know it takes time to sit with this stuff. So thank you for being here, and thank you for trusting me to walk through this with you. I'll see you in the next video.